Hello, beautiful mamas. As a working mom, sometimes I can really feel scattered, unorganized, or simply just rushing from one thing to another and all over the place. Finding time for myself and finding my sanity can almost feel like an impossible dream. Can you relate? Well, this is why I have created my free Mama's Guide to Creating Balance and Harmony as my gift to you. This guide contains my top 10 tips to creating balance and harmony in your life, as well as 3 beautiful trackers to help you get onto your journey in a fun and simple way. I have found by incorporating daily self-care routines and practices in my life for as little as 5 minutes a day, I am feeling more grounded, centered, and calm. By me tapping into my best version through these practices, I am also a better mom, a better partner, and a better colleague. Well, really, just a better human being in all the ways. So, if this sounds like something that you would like to explore, click on the link in the show notes below and download your free guide today.
We were all born with the innate power of knowing and wisdom within us. The challenge for many of us is that we were taught to seek answers externally instead of searching from within. And this is the reason why so many of us find ourselves going around in circles, searching for new ways, but could never find the way. The womanly way. It's not the way. It's not my way. But it is a pathway to support all of us returning back to self, reconnect with our inner wisdom through loving ourselves, knowing ourselves, and reconnecting with ourselves.
Tell me and be honest. Tell me should I've known.
So we can start to find our own way as modern day women. Are you interested? Well, sit back, relax, and welcome to this amazing journey.
Hello, and welcome once again to this episode of the Womanly Way podcast. I am your host, Lala Angela Wang. Well, if you listened to last episode of the podcast, obviously at work and in my personal life, we have gone through a little bit of grieving. When I say a little bit, it's actually not a little bit. It's quite a shock. Obviously, just like anything with sudden passing of people in our lives, right? So it's affected me and a lot of my work colleagues. And I was talking to one of my colleagues the other day. I was like, actually, you know what would be a great podcast episode? Is to talk about the 7 stages of grief. Actually, that's not what I said. I said it would be good to talk about the various stages of grief. I couldn't remember how many stages were there. So I actually had to do some research for this episode. And I found there were actually 2 different separate systems that describe stages of grief. There's a 5 stages of grief, and there's also a 7 stages of grief. So I actually read through them, and I find myself resonating with the 7 stage analysis. I think that's probably the best way to call it, the most. So that's what I'm going to share with you guys today. And, just a bit of an insight. I don't call myself a grief expert, but I think if you look at grief the same way that I look at life, then there are a lot of places where we can draw experience upon. So for me, grief isn't just when people pass away. Grief sometimes would mean that, perhaps we're letting go of a phase in our life. Sometimes we're letting go of people in our lives, maybe a job. Lately, I've had to make some big decisions around my life, so then I have to let go of partnerships, projects, or even ideas. And through each of those processes, depending on how important the thing, the partnership, the idea is to me, I go through the grieving process every single time. And that's why I said I wouldn't call myself a grievance expert, but I've gone through enough griefs in my life, especially in the past 10 years over my personal development journeys. Even to grieve a habit or a way of thinking or an emotion that was one of my primary emotions I had to let go of. Or even every time that I go through a phase of growth, I have to say goodbye to the previous version of me. I go through grief. So I'm going to walk you through the 7 stages. I'm going to talk about maybe some examples of each and what are some of the techniques that perhaps you can adopt while you're going through each of the phases. So the first stage is shock and denial. Right? It might be you wasn't expecting it, or even sometimes when we're expecting it, when it suddenly comes, it's like, oh, it's kind of like a realization, right? Like, oh, I have to say goodbye to this thing or this person. And sometimes, especially with non-person stuff, or even with relationship, how sometimes you're just in denial, like a relationship that it's way past its use by date, and you're just in denial and saying, no, we can stay together, we'll work this out. I am so familiar with this because that's a part of me. So you either be in shock or you may have been in denial for a long period of time already. It's a state of disbelief or even a little bit numb, or you're just literally feeling the world stayed still for a while. Right? Or you stop breathing for a while. Then you go to the next stage. Sometimes it might be pain. Sometimes it might be guilt. Right? It may feel that the fear, the loss is unbearable. Or maybe that there's some sort of guilt, like, especially in relationships, if I leave, or by me saying I want to leave this relationship, I'm making someone else's life harder. It might be, that sadness. You might feel hurt. Right? That's all pain, different types of pain. That sense of lost. And sometimes this stage, it might be a little bit of silent. It's almost like the initial shock has passed your body, and then there's just that bit of silence of you reflecting and thinking. And once you've done enough thinking, is where our heads start looping, then a lot of us goes into anger or bargaining. You might be really angry, right? Or you may even bargain with God, source, universe, that you don't want to feel this anymore and you want someone to help you release it. It's like you're trying to take the pain away so you don't have to feel it. Or, sometimes when we're little and people don't listen and we just like really need to release this. The way that I see it is when you feel the shock, right? The shock passes through your body. And step 2 is that pain and that guilt. It's a build-up. And depending on how you typically release the build-up of emotions in your body, and just remember, emotions are simply energies emotion, right? Every emotion is an energy. So when you have a lot of energy build up, it will explode. You either feel like you need to get it out of your system, so you start bargaining, start asking, like still finding a way to get it out of your system, Some people find people to talk and just talk it out. Some people are really angry. Like for me last week, I went through the angry phase. I was really, really angry, but also because in my head, I can play through scenarios and situations. I just said I was feeling the pain, right? So for me, stage 2 and 3 were kind of mixed together. I wasn't really angry, but I needed to talk it out to get that out of my system. And the 4th stage is depression. So you may feel you just need to be alone for a little while. For me, I am an emotional eater. I wish I could say I was, but I am an emotional eater. I'm a lot better now. But those times when I'm upset, I just need some comfort food. So I gave myself a break. I ordered Uber Eats probably for 2 days. And then I literally just gave myself permission to not do my strict diet that, I meant to do. I gave myself a bit of leeway. I had some ice cream, but hey, you can actually have ice cream during carnivore diet, believe it or not, but only vanilla flavors, heavily creamed ice cream. So for me, the stage of depression, generally what you find is I go into my little shell and I'm just really quiet. I just need to internalize it, be with myself, be with my emotions, allowing myself to feel the feels, as what most people would say. And just remember though, like some of these stages could happen after another really, really, really quickly, right? For me, anger and bargaining went through very quickly for me. I essentially went from, pain, guilt, a little bit anger, deep bargaining, and then went to depression. But I think this is when it's really important. I'm so grateful that I have the tools to identify what emotions I'm feeling and how I'm dealing with it. And I know that I just need to find ways to get myself out of the hole with respect, with dignity. And the reason I say with respect, with dignity is because I want to feel that I'm honoring the people that have passed away. Right? And then once you find ways to get yourself out of the dump, there is an upward turn. It's almost like that moment you go, all right, that's it. Enough is enough. And for me, it was the third day. So I found out on Tuesday, Thursday morning when I woke up, that was my upward turn. Like I've got this, right? That's instead of feeling upset on a situation that we can't change, let's do something about it. And that's when I recorded the last podcast. And then we have to reconstruct and work through. Right? This for me was, okay, what's my healing process? What do I need to do to heal? So I started journaling. I started writing prayers. I started doing my podcast and talk about, how can we live life as if tomorrow's our last day? And through this, as my healing process, I started to accept the situation, which brings us to the last step, which is acceptance and hope. Now, some people may never get through to the upward turn, or some people may not get through to the reconstruction of the working through. Or some people do get stuck in the depression, and that's why helps are important. But I truly believe sometimes during the reconstruction and work through phase, you are essentially working through how you're going to move forward. And acceptance is like, okay, I accept this now. This is the reality. But the real healing doesn't happen until you have reached acceptance. Because unless you can gracefully accept that this is what's happening, instead of accepting it in a negative way, it's like it's all doom and gloom. I accept this, but I just no longer believe it's safe. And you decide to stay in that space. Or you can say, hey, I've got some healing that I needed to do because of this event. I don't feel safe anymore. Then we can say, okay, what do we need to do in order to heal this? So in my opinion, going through the 7 stage of grief, I don't believe acceptance is the last step. Like I said last week, there are many, many layers when it comes to grief. If we just look at this, right? If you look at the 7 stages, out of the 7 stages, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 emotions in there. Even acceptance is an emotion. Acceptance and hope is an emotion. So that's 6, 7, 8, 9 emotions altogether. And if you imagine, if out of all 7 steps, you're layering all the negative emotions one on top of another. When you layer things, it's like Lego blocks or paper. When you fold it, right? When you fold it 7 times, 9 times, this paper becomes almost indestructible. So in order to heal, we kind of need to peel back the layer one by one and give ourselves the time to heal. And I think this is probably the biggest thing about healing grief. It's we're just like, nah, done, get over it. That's done, move on. But grief actually doesn't happen like that, right? Grief is kind of that emotion that gets under your skin and spread. Once it's spread, you kind of need to allow it time to flush it out of your system. So that's why I believe acceptance and hope is just the beginning of the healing process. Once you learn to accept that this is the truth, the reality, you then go and look at what am I accepting? Have I formed any negative beliefs, negative emotions around the event of grieving? And this is when you become really good at grieving. Like I said, it's not just about letting go of people. It's letting go of all the things, belongings even. Can you throw a party in tears and still celebrate what the goods in your life have given you? And I think I practice the grieving of belongings through every time I move. I chuck away a whole lot of stuff. And slowly but surely I learned to give thanks and celebrate the memories, because I know the memories will always be there for me, and if they're not, perhaps they're not important, right? And in a way, people think I'm getting more and more cold-blooded and unemotional about things, but the truth is I feel lighter and more invigorated the less stuff that I have. I used to have 2 wardrobes full of my stuff when I was married to my ex-husband. Now, with all my clothes, it's only half a wardrobe. And I'm still constantly decluttering. I have got other clutters that I do need to get rid of from over the years. But they really weigh me down. And I know it because every time I touch those things, it's like, oh, I really need to clean them out. Rather than, oh, I love this piece of memory. Right? So I think learning to let go of things and learning to release the emotions that were attached to grief will set you free. And understanding that grief isn't just about people. More often than not, the heavy ones that really weigh us down is actually event, belongings, and other things rather than our intimate relationships. You know, it could even be past relationships where people are still alive, they're just out of your lives, right? Friendships. It's kind of like that, not guilt, but it's like that I wish I've done it. The what if, regret. You know, I think a lot of grief is really linked with regrets. But if we can see the gift in every grieving instance, if we can learn ways to release those negative attachments and feelings and emotions, but in a way that honors every experience, that honors every thing, every people, every situation, every scenario that we're grieving, then we just know they're all becoming memories that are worthwhile instead of bogging us down. And I think if we want to talk about the gift of grief, this is the gift of grief. So if you are going through grief right now, my recommendation would be to go through these 7 stages and see where you are at. And if you're like, well, no, I'm not, I think you're probably still in denial, right? And the aim is really to slowly move out of denial and getting through the 7 stages, because you will go through it. Every person goes through it every time there's grief. It comes in different shape and forms, and it moves quicker or slower for some people. And also remember, sometimes you could go to a certain stage and then go back to the previous stage. So you could end up in cycles. Like I said, some people never get out of depression stage, and they're just cycling through. Maybe it could be cycling through pain and guilt and then anger and bargaining and then depression, and then cycle through it again. Or you might have a little bit of upward turn and then you hit the bottom again. And that's why grief is so complicated. And that's why if you are struggling, go and see someone who can help you with it. So I hope today's episode is helpful. I really desire to create a tool for people to reference to, and with examples that you can perhaps relate to. As per usual, if you have any recommendations, if you need to have a chat, I'm always available. You can contact me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or email through mywomanlyway@gmail.com. Love you all so, so, so much. And just remember, it's not unusual to grieve. You don't need to feel ashamed about it. And it's far braver to ask for help than to try and resolve it yourself. Love you all so, so, so much. I will talk to you next time.